Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Chuck Austin's first arc on Uncanny X-Men, Hope. Turns out the Juggernaut called for help because his pal, Black Tom Cassidy's plant mutation, is going haywire, and he's feeding off people to survive. This ends up including most of the away team, as well as Juggy himself, with only a fuzzy elf and the one-man Ice Capade standing in his way. Also, Cyclops' brother Havoc, thought dead, is alive and catatonic, with an infatuated nurse caring for him. Because that's how you add flair to the old retcon a character back to life trope, I guess. Issue 412's cover is maybe on the plain side, but perfectly fine. It's just Nightcrawler covering his face while seething, and looking a bit more anime than usual. Which main protagonist is he stalling for time for, Goku or Monkey D. Luffy? Maybe he just sneezed and is being courteous. After Bobby's attempt at calming down Black Tom gets him impaled with a vine, Kurt tries to convince the man-plant he can stop all this, with punches, but realizes that attacking Tom hurts the captives being drained. Tom refuses to release them and I guess laughs maniacally. Possibly in Canadian, which is weird because he's Scottish? We jump to the lakeside portion of Rosie Manor Convalescent Hospital, so Annie could say goodbye to Alex in a pretty setting, though didn't think she'd be doing so. I just feared either I'd take care of your vegetative body for the rest of your life, or you'd snap out of it, be revealed as a Swiss millionaire, then we'd get married and live on your private estate. You know, keeping my expectations realistic. That joke isn't too far off, because after confirming she spoke with her brother Scott about how he was loved by everyone at the mutant school, she laments he'll never sweep her off her feet. While he looks kinda grumpy, like he's waiting for a sentinel to attack and distract him from the situation. She goes on that he'll never snap out of his condition and be a father to her son while they spend their lives together. She falls into his lap, chastising herself for falling in love with a living dead man. You took care of him for a year, not knowing his real name, history, personality, unpleasant facts that maybe you could tolerate within reason, or other details essential in a good relationship. What you have is infatuation at best, and at worst, dependency issues that could get you fired.
Dumb police! You're dumb!
Scott seems to appear right in front of her, and she admits how unprofessional she's being. He doesn't seem to care, picking up his brother out of his wheelchair, carrying him by choice as he thanks Annie for what she's done. She asks if there's anyone that can provide the care he still needs, and Scott, perhaps sensing some lingering amorous intentions, says that before the accident Alex was very much in love with someone else, and the look on his younger brother's face seems to say, take the hint. But she doesn't, insisting he'll still need a nurse.
Scare everybody else with those crazy eyes, but you don't scare me.
Look, lady, I can set you up with a cigar-smoking Canadian with claws popping out of his hands, but my catatonic brother is spoken for. Back at Cassidy Keep, Nightcrawler promises to get the team out of this mess, with this very odd expression in an equally odd close-up. He asks Black Tom what happened, if he was trying to amplify his wood-based powers, or if a secondary mutation is manifesting, and he's siphoning people to slow it down. That gets him nowhere, so he teleports up to Stacy X, asking if she can still control pheromones, which may work on whatever humanity is left of their foe. She's in pain, but willing to try, and he teleports her free so she can do her thing. She starts verbally coaxing him with how powerful he is, even licking him, finally convincing Tom to let everyone else go so they can be alone. He'll be mad enough when he's defeated, and then he gets her bill. I also noticed this odd mistake of Stacy still being drawn trapped with the others. Or that's supposed to be Monet, and for some reason she's in Stacy's top, so error either way. Warren, who we last saw needing his heart to get beating again, loses his blue coloring, becoming more pale as the others are regaining their former vigor, though Monet looks rather Caucasian despite having naturally darker skin. Kurt instructs Iceman to freeze the root system between Tom and his victims, and with some pheromone-based encouragement to let go, the others are released from the vines. Stacy tends to Archangel, recalling an earlier question about what the X-Men do, and he says that they help people, that's all. She leans in for a kiss until he asks what she's doing. This is not what I expected from an all-mutant remake of Pretty Woman. Fortunately, the awkward moment is interrupted by Black Tom tearing the island apart, so Juggernaut and the X-Men make haste for the outside. Kane tells his old friend to let the mutants go, since they did try to help him, but he doesn't seem to be paying attention. Those that can fly take to the air with those who can't, and the brute does the courtesy of hurling Wolverine skyward just as Xavier passes by in his X-plane. He's even caught by Charles, which, considering this is an older man that needs a cane to get by after years of being wheelchair-bound, grabbing a muscular dude with metal on his bones, I suspect they'll both be pulled out once that little thing called gravity takes over. Meanwhile, Tom can normally speak again, accusing Juggernaut of betrayal after offering him a home and friendship, and that, like Marco's dad was apparently known to say, he was one of those people born hopeless.
Yay, you hurt my feelings.
Juggy gets knocked into the water, and Logan mentions that Kane had bloody knuckles, and was easily restrained by vines, lending credence to the earlier assertion his powers had waned, and he's vulnerable to drowning. So I guess the Gem of Cyttorak gave him gills beforehand? Charles asks if anyone has the strength to look for his stepbrother underwater, and cues Sammy the Fish Boy, who hasn't been seen this entire issue until now. He narrates that he could have ordinarily been doing anything else, speaking into the girls' locker room, seeking armed revenge on his bullies, but not diving into the sea to rescue someone, because he's no superhero. He calls out to Juggernaut, who can hear him but seems to be giving up. So Sam gives a speech about Xavier, who's a good guy who just wants to help. Unexpectedly, the lad admits that he was considering killing his tormentors at school, and that he hates his dad, which is kind of out of left field. We didn't get much about his dad to understand why, but anyway. This gets Kane to finally reach out his hand. If the next page doesn't have Juggernaut doggy paddling to shore, what's even the point of this story? So I can understand if Sammy can breathe underwater, even talk clearly underwater, but how does Juggernaut hear him underwater? Or is that one of Sammy's mutant powers? On the jet, Chuck thanks Marco for helping the X-Men, then offers to let him crash at the mansion while he recovers. Kane initially scoffs at the notion, but pauses as the team awaits his full reaction. You know this comic is dated because no one has taken out their phones in anticipation of recording his angry screed for Instatalk or TickBook or Tumblegram. Those are all real websites, right? Instead, he accepts Charles's offer, but clarifies he'll always hate his bald step-sibling, and he should forget any ideas that they'll have a more pleasant relationship. In retort, Xavier simply reminds him that his hope is eternal. So the behemoth takes a seat next to Sammy, telling him not to hold his breath for a thank you, just as the leather starts making flatulent adjacent noises. The comic ends with the plane headed back to the mansion, while Sammy lambasts Juggernaut with remarks that he broke wind. That was Uncanny X-Men's Hope 3-parter, and much to my surprise, it was actually kinda good.
Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria!
I remember having a bad experience with Chuck Austin's work, on top of poor word of mouth, but this story was mostly solid. Well-paced throughout, an overall good threat for the X-Men, and the surprise that an old enemy was looking for help and not a fight. Sammy starts out very identifiable, being bullied and struggling mentally and emotionally, self-isolating. It's a good beginner for a character that could grow into something more. An audience surrogate for new readers with potential that's exemplified when he goes in to save Marco, not knowing his history with our mutant heroes. The art is consistently good, with great detailing on the castle and vines, with a few rare errors like M's skin tone being wrong. While some interactions were pleasant, others, well, I already see where some criticized Austin's predisposition for sexual content. The arc's title wasn't exactly subtle, but neither was it poorly represented. Sammy's hope for his otherwise depressing life when Xavier arrived, Annie's hope that her mystery patient would wake up and fall in love with her. Granted, that was dashed the more she learned about him, but perhaps a spark remains, since she does continue caring for him at the X-Mansion after this. Juggernaut lost a longtime friend, but took Charles up on his offer, though with some brutishness, and he didn't squash Sam for the fart jokes, so maybe that's emblematic of hope as well. Though it was not exactly perfect. While I can excuse some characterization as feeling off, others left no impact at all. Monet doesn't really do much. Iceman can sometimes seem very, well, cold. I don't know if that's development from previous creators or not. Wolverine appeared fairly dismissive of those around him that can't regrow organs and relishing a chance to fight. The latter part isn't too atypical for him, but in this story it just felt off to me for some reason. He also seemed a little nerfed, taking time to recover from a spike through his lung. Not that a healing factor means he feels no pain or doesn't need to let mending take place, and the adamantium kind of slows the whole thing down, but it still felt unusual, like he'd recovered quicker from much worse in the past. Stacy has that bad girl vibe at first, embracing aspects of her life others might find shameful, like being a prostitute, and dislikes relying on others. But that near kiss with Warren may indicate something more complex, like she is not opposed to a monogamous relationship. Also, I guess being drained by plants technically kept Archangel's blood flowing, so when Tom was defeated, it got his heart going again. That's just my perspective. Let's ask a doctor what he thinks.
I'm in charge, and I don't care about your opinion. Now,
Okay, not as informative as I was hoping, but moving on. Though there were some nagging questions. Why was Black Tom draining people? And was it the reason his speech patterns were inconsistent? And I guess we have to assume those non-main character folk he was plant vamping on are dead, huh? The story plays pretty ambiguous with how Xavier's hotline can pinpoint an armed kid intent on revenge, but wasn't specific about the whole thing in Scotland. One could assume that maybe Sam's mom called, but Charles would have to do some kind of psychic scan to know about the gun if that was the reason they did that surprise park job in the street, which they left there for hours. You'd think they could have had Beast just fly to a nearby empty lot until Sam was ready to go. I also wonder how Marco reached out for help. The maniacal stepbrother remark indicates even the prof didn't know it was him, and more to that point, how much more about the mission did Charles know that would explain why this particular team was sent out? You'd think the presence of either Tom or Juggernaut wouldn't have been surprising, since one or more of the team would be familiar with Cassidy Keep from past adventures. Some things just strain credulity, especially when there's a lack of explanation, like why Beast couldn't talk to Sam's parents for a few minutes while the prof finished briefing the team, or how Nightcrawler missed huge fiery objects headed straight for the plane. Was Juggernaut really content to drown because his leafy friend turned on him, and was some new kid's pep talk really that convincing? Because clearly Sam does not have the super strength to get him out of the drink. That said, I imagine these things could potentially be cleared up in subsequent issues, but I can't say for sure. Though this might also be a case of a writer starting strong with one story, and something happening that leads to baffling decisions down the road. Because from the stuff I know that happens after this, I'm not sure what could be salvaged. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.